sleepy, but why not start a stream right now? It's 7:48 in Germany on the 25th of March. And today I'm going to talk about the fairy revolution. Mm, What does that even mean? What are main concepts of fairy revolution? And why are there many words you could use at the spot where the word fairy sits? Because it's a very general concept. So we're going to talk about fairies, and this is going to be about what people talk about language, semiologists again. They will call the magic way of language. It's magic language because actually most of time of human history, magic was the main mode of using language, and it is still with all the non-human animals. So today we learn about magic and revolution, and we'll see what it does. This comes at a special request from some friends somewhere, and usually I talk to someone saying you all the time in these videos, and maybe there's a person, but this time I mean another person. But even if you are meant with that, you should always remember I always just use the memory of some person I'm talking to get the flow, and then it really directed to kind of anyone. So it's not specific, but it helps me to imagine some specific you in this context. So here we go again. Meh. Mm, So, mm, fairy revolution sounds nice. Sounds good. What could it be? Is it all the funny creatures of the woods coming together and taking over the state, destroying the institutions, and creating insurrectionalist communes all around the countryside? Is it some communists, gnomes, and trolls taking over the state and creating socialism for some years before everything is given to the people? Maybe. Is it about the wonderful creatures from the Miyazaki movies like Totoro or Princess Mononoke or these characters? Are they fairies? What about the green fairy who's always drinking? What about Peter Pan? What about Tinkerbell? What about Mary Poppins? No, maybe the book. What about I don't know all the English words for these creatures. I know a lot of German words, but I know a lot of English words. So maybe I will go along, and everybody now can think of their favorite fairy and just look at it. That's the first part. What's your favorite fairy? Like if you remember your childhood, like you go back, and there are different. We need different kind of characters for the fairy revolution we're gonna uh, provide to this miserable world. So we need different shades from the scale of characters, fairy characters. So for my personal fun and pleasure, I start with a lovely one. So my lovely fairy creature is it's a little, it's like a dwarf, but even smaller, and it wears a hat which is made of leaves, and it's kind of also mixed with fungi. So it's a little fungi troll creature. That's my favorite, cute one. So it's a nature walking, planting stuff, being kind of slow and funny, and always going. It's really not. It's not an action character, but it's very. It has a lot of sustenance, and it keeps on keeping on. So it's very important for the disciplined part of revolution, which is steadiness, which is based in a philosophical remark on the concept of iteration, not of repetition, but of iteration, which is a very, very important concept for understanding mostly any of what I do, because it's very important to understand that repetition in an organism is iteration, because the organism changes to the next repetition, so it's not repetition. Very important. Repetition is only working if there's no change in time in the object, and if there is, it is iteration because it creates iterational data. I explained that in some video, but here again, as a quick catch up, iterational data, yeah, like the data recording and interpreting system changes from one instant to the next. It can be reproduced in machine learning, but it is still not the same as what I call the chimeric operational mode of human, which is animal, which is plant, which is stone, which is dust, which is star. Different topic, but still never do hierarchy. It always goes wrong and it takes away sense and meaning. Hierarchy is a real thing in the world, but it's based on domination. It's not natural or anything. It's just concretely made by people performing it all the time. And it might seem that it is difficult to get rid of it, but it is actually an act of will by the people dominating. It's not an act of will by the people being dominated. They cannot just say no, stop it, stop domination. And if the people dominating stop domination, the othered can still then go and say, "Now we do domination." That's also an option because domination is kind of a power play. It's like the sex of society. It's a grand scale imagination of what we do in the sheets. If we do our Lenin in the sheets impression or Dostoevsky in the streets impression or whatever we do. Mm, So this topic is not easy because I want to describe it in a way that gives the how to put it, to walk the fine line between words which are, and now we will use a term which I have to explain afterwards because it means a different thing than you might think at first. We have to decolonize signs, signifiers, signs, images, moves, body poses, gestures, looks, styles, sounds, like anything. Now, what does decolonize here mean? Is it the same thing like we want to decolonize many places, like the place I live in, Germany, or something like decolonize in a very materialist, old school way of maybe paying reparations or giving the land to everyone, creating a common land again, which is kind of the opposite of colonizing. So, is it about that? Not really. The word colonization was introduced also into European thought in a way um, as metaphor, which is kind of problematic if you compare the metaphor of colonizing, like in a intellectual, formal, abstract way, to real colonizing, which is slavery, death, and death again, taking all the resources and undermining any option for the people that being colonized to organize themselves on a long term by even controlling any way of getting out of colonization. But the colonization the word I'm using here is more based. It's only on language. So I used it once in this public speech, and people were kind of offended because I used it in the way the German theorist, sociologist working in tradition of critical theory, Jürgen Habermas used it as colonization of the life world of German. In German, it's Lebenswelt. In English, it's maybe the world of life, like the living world, like what we live in, like the colonization of what we live in, which is just a fancy way of doing the same thing as the Marxist thought was taking by being estranged from everything by ideology, rooted in stealing all the stuff and enslaving, blah blah blah, all the, but not to go into Marxism right now. But yeah, colonization here is just making words and signs and symbols specific in an ideological way. So, what does that mean? It means that in a modern first world setup, every gesture, every sign, every image is conglomerated and becomes part of an interdependent ideological structure, which means that any sign, any image, any gesture is kind of organized, arranged, compartmentalized in a specific place. So signs and gestures and images, they belong to some group, some people, some identity, which is a very nice capitalist way of doing this splitting and dominating stuff. So yeah, we have a lot of identities focusing on different parts of cultural signification, and kind of then we won't use the word colonizing here anymore because I think it doesn't really help to use it in this double sense. In this formal sense, I would just stick to symbolic domination, which is because it is not about killing the people or enslaving, it should be a different thing. And I don't think that these metaphors, using like war as a metaphor for not loving your partner, or using colonization as a metaphor for losing meaning, is kind of has a sense of parody to the real problem. So I won't use it anymore, but yeah, just German book will say colonization of creative work, and just mean that it's taken over by making it non-autonomous, and now nobody can control their own symbolic language anymore, which is a problem. But how far does this problem go? It goes very far. It seems on the first looking at it first, it seems maybe yeah, some signs and symbols are lost, but we got a lot. But it kind of turns out in my research that the opposite is true. We don't have any kind of signs left for us. Like, and if I say us, it's for those people who want to hope and love and not die inside, which is also a metaphor which could be problematic. But I think this one makes sense as far as dying as a symbolic process isn't really any better than dying in the material, literal process, like vessel body dead thing is bad, but mind disrupted from connection to body, living in dead zone for itself, is also very bad. So I think I can use death here, even if it ends maybe in a bourgeois existence and you can still be dead inside and live a normal life. So what does that tell us about privilege if people who can have endless amounts of money and access theoretically to anything don't have access to anything because they are so done with psychologically that they cannot access anything, not even themselves, not even their own image in the mirror. They cannot access anything. So, sure, like on a structural level, there is privilege, but on a practical level, not. Because privilege is still access. So, but if you don't access anything but your phone, and you live in a delusional state where you cannot accept any truth of anyone and cannot feel connection or empathy to anyone or cannot love anyone, not even just slightly talking about loving yourself, not even anything, you become a functional member of a symbolic order, then it's really bad. It's really bad. It is really bad, and it will not give any idea of an exit because the symbolic order arranged in ideological terms is a non-exit, non-game. It's just a non-game. It is meant as a propaganda technique, and this is why ideology is so much more fierce than it has been when capitalism just first made it by chance, just by historic necessity, and then evolved it into a more stupid version, which becomes more dangerous and difficult to hack because as more silly the way it gets, the world is hidden from creating meaning. It is, yeah, the sillier it gets, the sillier the way you make something complicated, the harder it is to make it easy. So, yeah, you maybe know that from standard internet trolling. If people say bullshit a lot, write some unprovable weirdness, it takes a lot of time to make sense of it. The more stupid they are. Like, that means they can be stupid on purpose. So, stupidity is actually a cryptology device. It's cryptic, it's compressing data and making it unreadable. So, if I it depends on people first getting in a zone of power where they have to listen, and then you can use any kind of stupidity to create so many layers of meaning that it's impossible. It's possible, but it's really impossible without a lot of tools of decryption to understand anything. So, and it makes it very easy for the system of domination, which just have to provide, it has to provide access points for any kind of people to just create stupid traps to make people sad, lost, and want to die. And everyone can do it because it, in this more matrix style kind of controlled symbolic environment, it just means entering the symbolic environment on the terms of the symbolic environment. So it seems kind of no way out situation because if you want to interact with the world as it is, colonial, capitalist, patriarchal, and so on, you have to kind of react to it. So you have to act in the symbolic order which is already present. So, like I just said, it will just reproduce the symbolic order which is present and then make you and your thought part of a framework in which you are not necessary as a person, as an organism, as a feeling, as a fairy. Not at all. It's not needed. And I'm not talking about radical fairies, if you think the group. I know it because James Cameron Mitchell, the director of one of my favorite movies, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, was a radical fairy. And I think this will go too far. But we do use fairy here as spirit. The most foremost um, quality of a spirit or a fairy is that it's non-binary. It is not a man or a woman. It is a field or in kind of way a system. It's a symbolic system uh, which is applied to a reality which not only creates boundaries of understanding, creating the wish to die, but it also creates rules of how to operate the language system, which controls the symbolic order. Some words here are maybe not as 100% precise as I would put it in writing, but I think it's enough to navigate the question right now. So, why fairy revolution? Considering all this, like, kind of semi-connected stuff I just said. What it turns out, it's also part of my research. It turns out that the symbolic order as ideology, as oppression, does exist, and it takes away meaning from anything you do. So you cannot do sports without thinking it's a competition. You cannot do praying without thinking it's dependent on some monotheistic belief. You cannot go vomiting without thinking it is something stinky. You cannot talk gibberish without thinking it's a possibility that you're losing your mind. You cannot change characters within 1 second without making yourself maybe think that it's schizophrenic. You cannot just eat the potato stew with your hands, throw it in your face, and then slip on it and then laugh hardcore without thinking you went crazy. You cannot enter a space and not be able to look at someone or have to drop your eyes and feel insecure without thinking that you kind of are not able to interact properly socially. You cannot read a book that you half understand and half not and just think I'm a good philosopher. You cannot write some kind of stuff on a paper and call it poetry. You cannot just balance on a ball with a pen in your hand and draw at the ceiling and call it painting. Maybe you can some of these things if you have been given the privilege of self domination, which is self reflection, which is a skill of privileged people. Um, Used by non privileged people, it's very, very dangerous. It creates delusion, which is useful but dangerous. But in the case you are very privileged, which means in this case you can just afford to create modes of self-explanation, which will stop people from being able to again understand you. So you auto immunize. You create immunity for your own symbolic order, which is in the case of privileged whiteness or others who access this way of creating conceptual art, which is the epitome of critical whiteness and reflection itself. So are fairies conceptual art? No, they are not. Why not? It's easy to figure out which things are not real ideology, but maybe can be used as fighting devices. As Leonard Cohen says, I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons, and beautiful they shall be, because this revolution we're about to win, and we are already winning in a formal way, but not in a practical way yet. Um, I will have to take a break soon, but I will go on. We were 24 minutes in. Mm, Um, so you see, the fairies, the spirits, the jinn in many languages, or Jen, or I will not go in many languages. I know Farsi one because a friend told me, and some people told me in Kurdish and in Arabic, but it's still a spirit, and the fairy spirit follows a story logic, and this is the main part. There is a interesting problem of subjectivity facing ideology, because one would think if I, as a person, face ideology critically, truthfully, honesty, blah, 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 that I can create change. But time has passed, and the system is immune against subjective critique completely. It The only way you can create subjective critique is in conceptual art, and there it is already described as being non-related to reality. So yeah, you can create change in art, which is non-related to reality. So it will be kind of an it can be a farce, a parody, a satire, a turnaround, a twist, a propaganda tool against capitalism, patriarchy, colonialism system, but it will only be possible to create it in art, and it will always not be related to reality in art. So there is a prism for meaning, and if you are living in a Western country, first whirling around, fucking around with your boredom or ennui or whatever you have, sure, do it. Because it is the space you should use, because it was created by people giving up almost, like seeing no hope, no future. So creating this white space where there's no meaning. It's also very Nazi style in a way, but it has a certain component of non-understanding, which can be a boat to float on in times where there is really no sense in connecting with reality, which is quite possible because all the stuff I say here and the fun I have in doing YouTube streams comes from the change in my life, which is that there is actually a person in my life listening to what I say. And I feel she understands what I say in a very deep way. And it didn't really make any sense to say anything like that and talk about winning a revolution or stuff if there wouldn't be any connection to reality in which it makes sense. Because it's not that I didn't believe in revolution since I was like 4 years old. No, I did. Always loved it. And sure, who doesn't? Who doesn't? Who doesn't want to have a world of equality and peace and non-identity crisis and non-material crisis and non-ecological crisis and non-doom? Who doesn't? Are some people, lots of people, don't want just for their own revenge quest because they think they failed, so the world should fail in old authoritarian mode. Um, Always worth reading the authoritarian character studies. Again, it's Adorno style, and I think Horkheimer Adorno in the US when they studied authoritarian character. And people are most authoritarian. You show a picture of a cat, and then you do a transmutation to a dog, and then in the end, like you have 10 pictures. Here's cat, and it get more dog, 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 dog. Here's dog, and the authoritarian one will see the dog and say it was the cat. And this gives the magic of ideological logic, which is linear and which is not at all the fairy paradiso logic we, as childish but very serious, very strict, and consequential revolutionaries, will use to take down the system. Because we will not take down the system by just using the master's tools. No, we won't. We just use nonlinear logic, and we can call it art because this world has created a weird glitch in itself where it calls like subversion art and revolution art and appropriation art and any kind of building metaphors and labyrinth and jokes is art, everything is art. Walking the streets can be art, and this is what they got from messing with us. Because, yeah, sure, they killed all the people. They killed all our friends. They killed all the dreamers. They killed all the revolutionaries. As a German, also reminding, killing like almost all the Jewish people. and yeah, also killing like queer people, Sinti and Roma people, and like gypsy people in general, or like non-working people, and most important, always disabled people who are not properly communicating with the ideological reality created to make them unable to communicate with it. So it's a very old way of domination where you take a fish and give it a bicycle and then say, look, fish cannot ride the bicycle. So that's a very nice way of disempowering people. And this is mainly the way how control is created, by just giving people stupid tasks which they cannot do and are very difficult actually for a non-linear system like human, like organism, very difficult. Like I will like this, like it's a to do this. It's a linear way of playing it. Very hard for a non-linear structure. If I play it non-linear, you see it doesn't really make no specific good sound. Does it sound cool? Am I a cool guitarist? Maybe not. But it is easy. So now I will take a break and listen to a song with you, because this is going to be a longer stream, so there has to be a song in it. And I'm gonna play Dangerous by Roxette. Yeah, so here I am back giving a lengthy lecture about fairy revolution. Um, we will get to the part where it becomes more interesting, but it won't show the significance of the thought if I don't build it up like this, very to give it this explosive dimension which I wanted to have. Because if I just say, yeah, do a non-binary spirit in the street dancing, what will happen? It will not create what, even the one I on which request I did the video on, will have anything to gain from, because it is to get the twist, you need to be twisted. So if you're not twisted, does it even make sense trying to understand what I say? Yeah, maybe could be a way for some person who's still starting to reflect on reality to say, oh, that sounds interesting. Maybe it will make sense to me in 20 years or tomorrow. But if you start out as a natural born anarchist, if you start out without any sense of hierarchy, then it will make much more sense, because it's actually all about destroying hierarchy. And as it turns out, the system of the discourse, which is supposed to be the relational meaning scape of every word and symbol, is not relational in this sense of equity. It is hierarchical. The symbolic order is not at all a place where everything is connected to everything and everything means kind of everything if you just connect it over three corners and so everyone is related. No, it is not at all. The system of domination in signs and symbols in capitalism, patriarchy, colonialism, whatever you want to call it, extractionism, I don't know, transphobic hellhole. You can racist, whatever, kill zone, white supremacist, ignorance, banality of evil, SS, strike down word. I don't know. You can go whatever you want. Mm, But yeah, to take it down, we see that signs and symbols are created for domination and not as some random structures. And this is because they are in hands of bourgeoisie and capitalist structures. And so if they have enough time to create hierarchies of meaning, they will. So everything is hierarchy everywhere. Maybe if you're a meditative person, spiritual person, or disobedient person in general, or you have this wonderful obsessive defiance disorder, or how is it called? Obedience defiance disorder, or being odd, you maybe don't react to it. So, yeah, so you got a nice shot at the system. And yeah, like I said, we're going to take it down anyways. We're going to win this revolution. It will take a while because still people get ready, but they will be ready. And yeah, it is all said that and cannot be put in words how cynical it is to even talk about revolution in a time where everybody is just dying more and faster in a faster pace than at least the last years. It's very excessive, and there's lots of wars that are even kind of starting in a way right now. So how can I talk about revolution? Hmm. First of all, it has to be clear that in this sense, talking about revolution was always cynical because it was always about talking about change in a situation where there is no way to go on. If people say revolution, it was never about, yeah, it's so great, nobody's suffering, so we do it because it's fun. No, it is about it. There's no way. We have to do it. There's no future. And not in this, yeah, radical 90 cents, but in this more very specific 2025 sense, where it is still not the doomsday of the of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants killing all the Jewish people or something. No, it is the it is supposed to create a situation where there is no way back. Like the doom that is imminent is not a certain doom for every living creature on Earth, which could be an option, but it is more about destroying the last possibilities of ever getting back to love, life, hope, joy, peace, pleasure, and fighting adultism and creating a fair world for every person, young or old, and for the animals. So, how do I get it more precise? I don't know. I already said that if you are acquainted with nonlinear logic of performing arts, you actually already know how this revolution works. It's the only difference is that you take away the white space, the art space, you just it's just gone. It's neglectable. It's just a workplace. It's just some workplace. So what happens if I take the performative approach, which is not playing theater, but vesseling stuff? Because if you do performance, you just say, like performance art in a very basic way is giving yourself a task and then doing it. Just like program. If you do it in a simple way, and that is for me the way how performance art can be best understood, it's just taking a task, writing it down maybe, or remembering it, and then just doing it. And you don't do anything else. You just do what you said you would do. So if you write down, I'm going to sit on the chair, and then everybody can cut my clothes off, and then I will become an icon. Maybe you cannot control the icon part, but you can believe it. Put it in your setup. Um, yeah, this is performance art. So if I go out on the street and say I am a witch, and I will scare some right wingers, does it work? Yes, it does. Why does it work? Because I know what these words mean in a performative way, in gesture, in sound, in sight, in dress, in clothes, everything I know. Because if I say witch, I know what I mean. Because I don't mean the capitalist way of reproduction, and I don't even mean like a good book about witch hunt or something sad, or even worse, witch representations in the media. I remember what it meant to me when it caused a sense of magic or danger or fear, because these things are non-linear, or the affects, they are non-linear. They just jump up and down, so they create different meanings. So yeah, so it's easy to create meaning by just performing fairy, because yeah, like in the being a whole person, we are interlocked in the system of domination. We cannot just escape it, not by an act of wishful thinking, and not by some kind of meditation or nothing. There's no way. The system will remain the same. But if we just perform, so act like something which is not part of the system, but still remain part of reality, we create a nonlinear reality. And what about a nonlinear reality? It cannot be controlled. It just can't, because it will not follow a certain pattern which is objectifiable. And so if you go out and perform the Baba Yaga or Tinkerbell or whoever you think is powerful, because it can actually, it depends on what you think in your own way of formalizing spiritual power is most powerful. If you think it's the Leviathan or Bahamut, the dark fish demon, Tiamat, the Sumerian one, or maybe some from the Nok culture. I don't know. I don't know wherever you're from. You may have some idea what in your own symbolic order, because it will remain. That is in this symbolic order will remain. The meanings are colonized in the world, colonized, taken away, estranged, and headed to your face to make you dead. But this chimeric organism is reproducing itself all the time, so it remains alive. So there is always iterative data. There is a perception that it is wrong. So is there a right living in the wrong world? No. But is there a right loving in the wrong world? Yes. Because if you take love as a concept of enabling what is good for yourself, not willpower, but love power, as what creates what you make you feel good. Like it's kind of an iterative feel good feedback loop. And good in this sense is not something, but it is just feeling in charge of your own meaning, autonomy of meaning. And if you have autonomy of meaning, something weird happens. Like the Satanists will tell you, they always seem to know, the modern patriarchal shitheads called Satanists. They will say, if you just are free from everyone's judgment, you have ultimate freedom, blah 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 blah. No, 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 no. You are not free from anyone's judgment, but you just know what you signify. So if I go out, dress in 7 layers of bones, and scream the name of the witch and go like, all the brujas will come and eat your soul, in some weird voice, I know what I did there. And there's no one who can gaslight or take it away from me in any kind of stupid relational interpretation, hermeneutical, whatever bullshit. It won't work. If I go out with a hammer in my hand, which I won't because people get arrested for less, maybe not me, but it's still not a good idea. So if I still would go out and just smash something on the floor, and I see it as a ritual for getting rid of demons from last year, it will be that for me. And now people will come and give you interpretation. They would say, in the system of this, it means that, or I think it means that, or I think you should do that, or whatever they say. But that's the whole point about love, you know? If you remember how it works, having a crush on someone, you will remember it's never about, like, no one can tell you anything about it. It's very obvious. You have the crush on the thing and on the system of the idea of the perspective. So people can say, "You're not in love," and you would say, "Yes, I am." And so, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, maybe you're in crush, whatever you call it. It is really, it's not, it's about this feedback loop. And so there is autonomy of meaning, which will come up in a fight with reality. It will create tension, corrosion, disruption, all these things that are now in the hands of some powerful capitalists. But if we take it back to our bodies, give ourselves autonomy of meaning, we can be fairies. And what's the problem? Yeah, people will get, normally they go to the asylum because people say they're crazy. So that's why we don't do it in la la la, now I'm a fairy. No, we do it in a revolutionary, very disciplined practice, and we just do it. And then if people say, "What are you doing?" You should go to a crazy person home. You are a woman or whatever you are, like people will judge you. You just switch your voice and say, "No, I am a very normal person doing performance art." So it is very, all is good. And if you have any questions, I will get a therapist. And if I don't already have one, I really like the system of therapy and I will be healthy. No, no, I'm not doing art in the general way because I'm not getting paid, I know. But still, I just do it because of practice. You know, I want to do a performance piece on public in disobedience. So maybe I have to try a lot of ways. And as long as you can tell yourself some story which connects to the hegemony of control, it will also create your own autonomous way of dealing with control. So, hmm, does then even control get to you? No, not really. Because control will interact with your performance and not with your body. So, is it a lot of work? Is it all very nerve wracking? Will it take a lot of people to actually get stuff done? Yes. Is it a way to start? Yes. Was that a good introduction to Fairy Revolution? I don't know. I tried. It's still early, and I think there has to be a lot more like connections to be made to understand the whole image. But for my own practice and for what maybe to give you a final thing to do, I will use my favorite. I will use some favorite tools I have here to make a little display of what I said. Like here is a mirror, and if I want it, I can catch anyone's soul with it. I just show it, then I say, "I catch your soul," and then I go, then I take it, and then I snip it twice, and then I free it again and say, "Don't be like this." I do believe it, I do connect it to the person I've seen, so it will shape my behavior to the person. And as long as I don't create the dogmatic and stupid idea that this creates a hierarchical level of understanding to the world, that now that I used some magic and now I'm the smarter person, then I will be back to ideology and will be lost. But if I go take this cat, my favorite meow cat, one I love, and this crystal, and make them dance, and then say, "You, the cat, will see the sparkle in everything." Maybe nobody will understand what that means, but I do. And it will create a nonlinear pattern in which this will come to fruition. Because nonlinear pattern is growing like plants and like everything in the world. So if we don't make a difference between us and everything and love everything intentionally, so we keep our intention, that's what we need. Then we can code switch and change the world in a random way, but settling on the, oh, that's interesting that we're using settling now in the wrong way. Settling on the concept of love, settling on the pattern of love. And if you still think love is the Walt Disney thing, no, I will do another lecture on it. It is a form of self-validation of the body or something. So yeah, be blessed and yeah, have a nice day. Bye.